So let's talk about Jehovah's Witnesses, and let us briefly compare Jehovah's Witnesses with Seventh-day Adventists. Jehovah's Witnesses is another religious group that originated from the Millerite movement. Jehovah's Witnesses are not doing as good as Seventh-day Adventists, I should say. There are about 25 million Seventh-day Adventists all over the world nowadays. As for Jehovah's Witnesses, there are only about 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses. Seventh-day Adventists started their organization in 1863. That is the year of the formal establishment of this religious sect. Jehovah's Witnesses started as an organization in 1884, a little bit later. And their official name is Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. But they are known to everybody as Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, Seventh-day Adventism is part of the mainstream Christianity. Jehovah's Witnesses, although they claim that they are Christian as well, and not only they are Christian, but they are Christian of the only true sort, they are viewed more like a cult rather than a mainstream group. So why is it that Jehovah's Witnesses looked at as a cult? Let's talk about the features of a cult. What is the difference between a cult and a religion, a normal religion, so to say? So first of all, cults are usually very young religious movements. And cults are usually led by charismatic leaders. Leaders who are able to mesmerize the public and their followers. And as a result, leaders who are able to exert complete obedience from their followers. Cults are usually groups, communities that are very tight, and in many cases, if you, God forbid, become a member of such a group, you will be asked to leave your family and to come and live within the community. So that is definitely a red flag. Also, many cults would ask you for not only some donations, but donations of large sums of money. So if you become a member of a religious group and people are asking you to sell your home and donate all this money to the group, that is definitely a red flag. Also, some cults may have problems with traditional medicine. We discussed those groups. Jehovah's Witnesses is one of them, Christian Science, Scientology, people who would prefer alternative medicine, spiritual healing, but who would refuse blood transfusion or psychiatric drugs. This is another red flag. Finally, many cults would disassociate themselves from the rest of society. They would see everything in black and white. They would see themselves as the only group that is being saved, and the rest of the world that is drowning and going to hell. So all of these, and some others, all of these are definite features of a cult. So let us take a look whether Jehovah's Witnesses can be classified as a cult. Jehovah's Witnesses is a modern religious movement, but it is not as young as 20th century religious groups. They have a strong organization. Jehovah's Witnesses is run as a business, Their headquarters is in New York. We cannot say that we have the case of charismatic leaders that mesmerize their followers. Jehovah's Witnesses are asked to give to the church, but I'm not sure whether this donation is substantially more than people are usually asked to give. Every religion would ask for a donation because religions are non-for-profit organizations, and they live by donations. But where Jehovah's Witnesses looks like a cult is in their belief that blood transfusion should be rejected. They have problems with modern medicine. They reject blood transfusion on the basis of their interpretation of Leviticus, the third book of the Torah. Leviticus forbids drinking blood. Jews are forbidden to drink blood, and Jehovah's Witnesses believe that blood transfusion is the same as drinking blood. So that is one feature that is questionable. Also, Jehovah's Witnesses do disassociate themselves from the rest of society. They think of themselves as the only group that is being saved, and the rest of the people are going to eventually to be damned. And they also believe that big business, world religions, and political states are the three main allies of Satan. Big business, world religions, and major political states are the three main allies of Satan, which means that they basically disassociate themselves from the social structure. So they do disassociate themselves from traditional social structures, and they also disassociate themselves from traditional Christianity. They do not celebrate Christian holidays because they believe that those Christian holidays originated from the Rome, which is true. Many Christian holidays originated in the Roman Empire. For example, Christmas. We do not know when Jesus was born, but in the Roman Empire, December 25th was celebrated as the day of the birth of Persian god Mithras. And Mithraism was the main competitor, religion, which was the main competitor of Christianity back in the 2nd and the 3rd century. But when Christianity became the state religion in the 4th century, December 25th was switched from Mithras to Jesus. That was convenient. People, were accustomed to celebrate this day. So we do not know when Jesus was born. So technically speaking, Jehovah's Witnesses are right. They do not celebrate Christian holidays because they think that these holidays have pagan origin. They do not celebrate their own birthdays because they think that celebrating your birthday is a sign of egoism, egocentric impulses. They do not salute the national flag. They do not sing the national anthem because, again, they think that all political states are the allies of Satan. They do not participate in wars. They are conscientious objectors. So, also, some of the cults create difficulties for people to quit religion. In normal religion, if you want to become part of it, you go through the initiation ritual. But if you want to leave, you just leave and you have no problem. In the case of Jehovah's Witnesses, if you want to leave this organization, you will be shunned No one will talk to you. No one will have any contact with you. And if, let's say, you want to leave and your family still belongs to this religion, then that creates a serious family problem, because the rest of the family will be forced not to communicate with you. Now, the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses was Charles Taze Russel. He was born, by the way, here in Pennsylvania, in Allegheny, now part of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. He belonged to a Presbyterian church. And as I said, like many religious thinkers of that time, at some point in his life, he became a skeptic. He was disappointed in his religion. But then he recovered his interest, and he created a Bible study group. This Bible study group was created in the 1870s, and they held regular meetings for about 5 years. And that's how Jehovah's Witnesses started. It started simply as a Bible study group. Charles Taze Russel never claimed to have been a prophet or to have had a revelation. Jehovah's Witnesses are Christians because they believe in Jesus and in the Bible. In fact, they produced their own translation of the Bible, which I would not recommend, because their translation of the Bible reflects their own concepts rather than the text itself. They twist sometimes and change the translation so that the translation reflects their interpretation. So Jehovah's Witnesses started as a Bible study group. It was an apocalyptic in nature because it arose out of the Millerite movement. It included some of the apocalyptic predictions. Nowadays, if you look at Jehovah's Witnesses' website, you will see that they do not emphasize their apocalyptic beginnings, and they do not emphasize their apocalyptic predictions. But in fact, in the beginning, the influence of the Millerite movement was obvious. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses have their own apocalyptic calculations. Let me read to you some passages, this time from the book of Revelation, on which they were basing their predictions. This is chapter 12, one of the key chapters of the book of Revelation. And chapter 12 mentions 1260 days. This is chapter 12, verse 6. The woman herself fled into the wilderness, where she was to be looked after for 1260 days. Now, chapter 12 tells us about the woman who is about to give birth to a child, and she is pursued by the dragon who wants to swallow the child. And the woman is given her wings. The woman is giving her wings, and she is fleeing into the desert, where she will be kept for 1260 days. So that will become one of the key numbers for Jehovah's Witnesses. And yes, it seems that 1260 days, you will not use this specific number in a symbolic fashion. And later in the chapter, in verse 14, we read, "But she was given the wings of a mighty eagle, so that she could fly to her place in the wilderness, where she was to be looked after for 3.5 years." So it seems that 1260 days equals 3.5 years. And then in some other portions of apocalyptic books in the Bible, we read about 7 years, or 7 times. So if 3.5 years, 3.5 times, equals 1,260 days. Then 7 times, or 7 years, would equal twice as much, 2,520 days or years. Following Miller, Jehovah's Witnesses would say that 1 day of the Lord equals 1 human year. And the beginning of their calculation is different from Miller. Miller takes the year 457 as the year when Jews were allowed to return to their homeland. However, Jehovah's Witnesses take another year as the beginning of their calculation, 607. What did happen in 607? The year 607 was the year when the king of the kingdom of Judah, the last king of the kingdom of Judah, the king Josiah, who was considered to be a very righteous person, died in the battle defending his kingdom, and the kingdom fell to the foreign powers. Now, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, God should always have his representation on earth. God's power should always be represented in some kind of theocracy when people exercise their power in the name of God. So the last theocratic state, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, was the kingdom of Judah. And this kingdom of Judah ceased to exist in 607. So that was the end of God's representation on earth, and that's why Jehovah's Witnesses start their calculation of the apocalypse from the year 607. So then, if you take 607 as the starting date, and you add 2520 years, you will get 1914, the year when the First World War started. And for Jehovah's Witnesses, this beginning of the First World War was the beginning of the apocalypse. We do live now in the apocalyptic age. The second president of Jehovah's Witnesses, Joseph Franklin Rutherford, who became the president right after the death of Charles Taze Russel. He became the president in 1917, and he was the president until he died in 1942. So this second president significantly changed the course of the development of Jehovah's Witnesses. He switched their attention from Bible study to what they are doing now, namely to witnessing, placing calls, promoting their literature, trying to convert people. They are still doing this, and that is their main focus of their activity. In 1940s, Jehovah's Witnesses published 2 books that represented the summaries of their beliefs. So the excerpts that you have in your reading materials come from those 2 books. We do not know who authored those books. Those books were anonymous. They were published anonymously. But even until now, those books are taken as authoritative summaries of Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs. So when it comes to the doctrine, you will see that Jehovah's Witnesses are not quite Christian if you compare them to traditional or mainstream Christianity. Jehovah's Witnesses do claim that their Christianity is, in fact, the truest and the most original form of Christianity. But if you compare their doctrines with mainstream Christian churches, you will see that they differ significantly. As always, we will discuss 4 concepts: the Trinity, original sin, resurrection, heaven and hell. Let's start with the Trinity. Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in the Trinity. They do not believe that God can be incarnated on earth as a human being. They do not believe that Jesus was God. They do believe that God is one, and therefore nothing can be associated with God. In fact, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the idea of the Trinity is a pagan idea, that it originated in pagan civilizations, in ancient Egypt, in ancient India, in Greece, and there is truth in these affirmations, because yes, in India they have their own Trinity: God Brahma, God Vishnu, and God Shiva. Brahma is the creator of the universe. Shiva, Vishnu, is the supporter of the universe, and Shiva is the destroyer of the universe, for example. Ancient Egypt had their own Trinity: Father, Mother, and Son. So Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the idea of the Trinity came to Christianity from paganism, and therefore it should be rejected. But if they do not believe that Jesus is God, who then is Jesus? According to Jehovah's Witnesses, Jesus is not God with the capital G, but he is God with the small g. Jesus is the first creature of God. He was the first of God's creation, and he is unique because it is only in the case of Jesus that God not only foreknew what he would be, but also predestined what he would be. According to Jehovah's Witnesses, God may foreknow what we will do, but we have free will, and our free will is not predestined. God did not predestine us to either salvation or damnation. It is up to us. But when it comes to Jesus, his trajectory of life was completely predestined by God. He was perfect in all ways. So Jesus is the first creature, and with the help of Jesus, according to Jehovah's Witnesses mythology, with the help of Jesus, God creates everything else. First, the realm of the spirits, then the material realm, then the earth that evolves with all of its complexity and complex creatures. So now let's talk about original sin. So Jehovah's Witnesses do believe in the original sin. However, their interpretation of the story of Adam and Eve is very different from traditional Christianity. According to Jehovah's Witnesses, Adam and Eve were created perfect, which means they were created physically immortal, but not spiritually immortal. Spiritually, they were not immortal, but they didn't need spiritual immortality because they would have lived forever as human beings. So the original sin did happen, but the punishment for the original sin is mortality. Adam and Eve became mortal. And since Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe that we possess an inherently immortal soul, they do believe that when we die, we cease to exist. We fall into sleep. But as we already know, in Christianity, the absence of immortality, the lack of immortality, is compensated by the belief in resurrection. So what do Jehovah's Witnesses believe about resurrection and the apocalypse? We have two more concepts to discuss: resurrection and heaven and hell. So when it comes to resurrection, it seems that Jehovah's Witnesses follow the spirit of Christianity. They do believe in resurrection. However, here, as always, they have their own twist on what kind of resurrection they believe in. They believe in two kinds of resurrection: physical and non-physical. Here they follow the book of Revelation, chapter 20. Remember, the first resurrection before the millennium is the resurrection of the saints who will reign with Jesus. This is the spiritual resurrection. And this is the highest heaven. This is your best bet for salvation if you are Jehovah's Witness. But not everybody will be eligible to go through spiritual resurrection. Only 144,000 people, the specific number that is taken from Revelation as well. So only 4,400 people will be raised to heaven. And you may ask, are there still some seats available? Nobody knows. Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you that some already have been resurrected and lifted up to heaven, but probably there are some vacancies. So you can still hope for the highest heaven. But there is the lowest heaven, which is physical resurrection. Everybody else, all people who will not go through spiritual resurrection, will go through the physical resurrection. So physical resurrection may be for salvation, may be for damnation. It depends on your own choice. As Jehovah's Witnesses teach, in the end of days, Jesus Christ will return. His return will not be earthly, physical. It will be heavenly, as it says in the book of Revelation. However, as a result of this return, and as a result of the first resurrection, Christ and his saints establish the millennium. The millennium will be the kingdom of God on earth. And for Jehovah's Witnesses, this millennium will be real, physical, and historical here on earth. So it is during this millennium that those resurrected people will be given a chance to redeem their sins, to accept Jesus, and to change their ways. After 1,000 years, following the scenario of the book of Revelation, there will be the final battle, Armageddon, the fight between good and evil. And here, if you have not decided to follow Jesus, then you will perish, because the goodness will prevail and the dark forces will be thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur. So what do Jehovah's Witnesses believe about heaven and hell? Heaven, for Jehovah's Witnesses, has two compartments, as I said: the spiritual compartment and the physical compartment. If you are lucky enough to go to the spiritual compartment, then you will live forever in a spiritual form. If you are still lucky and are resurrected on this earth, and you prove to be worthy of eternal life, you will return to the state of Adam and Eve, to the state of primordial physical immortality. You will live here forever and ever. As for hell, Jehovah's Witnesses, like Seventh-day Adventists, believe that there is no hell as a place where people will be tormented forever and ever. Hell means complete annihilation. Since humans are not inherently immortal, if you are not re-given your physical immortality, you simply perish. You cease to exist. But the second question is, do we really want to live forever on Earth? You know, you may never have thought about this, but in light of recent developments with artificial intelligence, have you heard of Ray Kurzweil, a famous American inventor? If you haven't, please check him out on YouTube or read some of his best-selling books. For example, Singularity is Near. Ray Kurzweil is a person who is working with pattern recognition technology, and he wants to achieve singularity, which means the complete merging of human biology with computer technology. And he believes that by merging human biology with computer technology, we can achieve singularity and immortality. Humans can become physically immortal because they will be enhanced, half human, half machines. So this question of whether we want actually to live forever here on Earth is not a theoretical question. It may be a practical question. Ray Kurzweil himself wants to live forever. He's in his 60s. He takes 250 vitamins per day. He goes through medical tests twice a year, and he claims that while in his 60s, his body works as if he is in his 40s. So he plans to achieve physical immortality in his present life. But again, the question is, what would this mean? I think he may be right, and maybe at some point we will be able to enhance our bodies, and we will be able to live, let's say, 1,000 years. 1,000 years looks like eternity. Maybe even we can escape aging, and we can, let's say, live for 1,000 years as young people. Not bad. However, the problem is that the one thing that so far people were not able to escape is suffering. Even when you are young, you suffer. And you suffer in many ways, from physical pain, from psychological pain, emotional pain, etc. So live forever here on Earth means suffering here forever on Earth. So personally, I think that the idea of physical immortality equals the idea of creating hell on Earth.